right. Okay. So we just you shared that on Noster. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode on the Dr. Fernando Morales podcast. Today we have Theo. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce correctly the last name Mogenet. Mogenet.
Mogenet, yeah.
Mogenet. All right. So I'm going to call you Theo just to make things more simple for now. He's from BullBitcoin. He's going to talk to us about many things, but one of the most cool things is that BullBitcoin is finally in Mexico since April 10th. So before we get into BullBitcoin, Theo, do you mind telling us a bit about yourself, like how you got into Bitcoin, for example?
Yeah, so I was working as a data scientist at Oracle, a big software company. And serendipitously, I digged into a kind of game theoretical licensing problem that most of these companies have when they install on-premise software, which is that, let's say a client will purchase a certain number of licenses, and then he will abuse the contract, installing, for example, 10,000 instances, instead of 100 as stipulated in the contract. But you cannot audit that because if you want to audit the server and stuff like that, you have to notify the company so they have time to clean everything and install the license. And so there is this kind of cat and mouse game whereby like they overcharge for any single license. The client knows he pays too much, but he knows he will overconsume. So there is this kind of like weird like equilibrium in the market. And I was kind of fascinated by the fact that there was like basically no technical solution for that. And I stumbled upon a computer science thesis. It was like in 2015, written from a guy in Australia, something like that, explaining how you can tackle this problem using Bitcoin's underlying technology. At the time, the term blockchain was not that often used. And I found that really interesting. I already had experience with Bitcoin, but mostly like buying drugs over the internet with friends. But I didn't like interact with the network myself. Like it's just I did drugs. I knew it went from the darknet. But so and so then I decided to like just dig into it. And it was around the time of Ethereum ICO. So to be honest, at the beginning, I didn't understand like why Bitcoin stand out and how, in what capacity it solves the monetary problem, why it's different and stuff like that. So I was more like interested with the whole like decentralize the world, smart contract ideas and stuff like that. And as you remember, I think it was the beginning of a bull market. There was a lot of hype around all this concept, especially the blockchain revolution. Yeah. And so I started writing article, basically like free online stuff to describe the technology, break down the core concept, explain like the basics of asymmetric cryptography and distributed networks and stuff like that. And so a lot of like new projects reached out to me because they needed help to structure their white paper, to structure the project, to review some like technical documents and stuff like that. And at that time I was in business school, so it was a nice gig because it allowed me to earn money on the side. And eventually I fell down. Like I understood that I could like just make like a lot of money like that. And I wasn't really not happy in business school, so I decided to opt out of business school and just like became like an independent consultant, basically.
Awesome.
And like 6 months later, I was traveling in Japan and I lost my wallets. And it was like the beginning of my trip. I was staying there for like basically a month. And it's a really expensive country. I was in Tokyo, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world. At the time, I was something like 23 or something like that. So as you can imagine, I could not turn to my friends to ask them to front me the money to pay for my trip or stuff like that. And so I basically called my bank and my credit card company, asking them to find a solution for me. So imagine I'm like funny. I'm calling like from Japan to Miami, like it's something crazy, like $15 a minute. You talk to a guy that transfers the call to a guy, like putting you on hold for like ages. And then they tell me like, you have two solutions. Whether we send you either we send you a Western Union, maximum $1,000. It will cost you something like $150. It will take 2 days, and you have to withdraw in cash in a physical office in Tokyo. Second solution, we will send you a new credit card. It will take by FedEx. It will take like 5 days, and you just have to give us an address. But I was kind of backpacking at the time, and I wasn't able to provide an address of where I will be in 5 days. And so I was kind of like frustrated because I was longing for this trip, and I was like, yeah, I fucked up. It's messed with all my plans and stuff like that. And at some point, I had this kind of light bulb moment where I was, okay, I have like some crypto. I am on the tech capital of the eastern hemisphere of the planet. Mm-hmm. There must be a solution to exchange that for cash. And at that time, I just had like some Bitcoin and some Ethereum and Kraken. I never used it like for payments or stuff like that. So for me, it was just an investment, And and then so I just like Googled like Bitcoin ATM in Tokyo, find out that there was like about 10 minutes walk from my Airbnb where I could exchange Bitcoin for cash. So I just like looked like tutorial online how to use a software wallet on my phone. Pretty straightforward. I withdraw some sats from Kraken. I loaded it on my phone, and then I went to the bar. When I arrived, the ATM wasn't working, so I asked the bar manager to call the guy in charge of the ATM. And then like half an hour later, there is this like big black dude, like 7 feet tall, entering the bar, which is quite uncommon in Japan. Like, and so he starts speaking with me, perfect English, asking me like, how many do you want to change? I can do up to like 100K. I'm like, what? Like,
wow,
that's huge. And I was like 5-6K will suffice. Like, it's perfect. I can enjoy my trip and stuff like that. And he says to me like, okay, let's meet tomorrow. I will bring the cash, and then we will do the transaction, have a drink. And so next day we meet up in the same bar. I send him the sats. He's like with this kind of like craft bag with like the equivalent of like, I think it was like 6,000 yen, $6,000 equivalent in yen. And like we just stay there for 15 minutes chatting about what he does, and basically he was a miner. And so he asked me if I have like ways to find like more Bitcoin to purchase and stuff like that. Of course I didn't. And so that's when it struck me that I had like a real world practical problem that no financial institution in the world could solve for me. And I'm based in Paris. I'm from France. I had like at the time I had like a premium tier credit card, like well-stuffed bank account, like a private banker. Like it's not as if like I was like destitute from a third world country or something like that. And then I started like to dig around into economics and finance because I didn't have any proper training into that. Even though I was in business school, prior to that, I had more an engineering background. And so I basically took a sabbatical, like reading economics, starting with Keynesian economics, then Austrian economics, finance theory, economic history. And I started understanding like how like the whole banking system worked, like banking history and stuff like that. And that's basically at the end of this year that I stumbled upon Safedin's books, The Bitcoin Standard. And then it totally clicked to me like why Bitcoin was really more important than all this crypto and blockchain stuff. Also, it was a bear market, so you have more calm and more time to study this stuff. And going from that, I decided to devote my time to Bitcoin and work for the industry, basically.
That is amazing, amazing story. And you lived in real life. It solved the problem for you in real life. And well, I have to ask, in what part of the trip did you lose your wallet? Like in the very beginning of your trip in Japan, middle?
At the very beginning, like the third day.
Ooh, wow. It's like good thing you remembered you didn't. So you had in Kraken, so you didn't have that problem of losing your seed phrases or anything, right? It was a password.
I honestly at the time I didn't know what a seed phrase was. Like no,
okay.
I'm exaggerating. I knew because at the time I was like meddling with stuff on Ethereum testnet, like trying to write smart contracts and stuff like that. But like it's coins on testnet. Like you just don't care. Like you write that on a piece of paper, you leave that on your desk, and but I had no experience with like self custody basically.
Okay. And we'll get back to that later when we talk about Bull Bitcoin more deeply and what services they offer. But where does Bull Bitcoin come into the story?
Way later into the story. So that was 2018, and I started working for Bull Bitcoin a bit more than a year ago. I didn't know much about the company. I knew Francis from Twitter, and like I've seen like talks of him at conferences and stuff like that. I didn't know the guy personally. I was like kind of like, yeah, he seems based. Like, and so one day he basically reached out to me saying like, okay, I want to expand Bull Bitcoin in Europe. I'm French Canadian, so it's important to me to start with France. I've asked around, and a lot of people said good things about you. We should meet. I'm in Paris, like in basically 2 weeks. Let's discuss it. And then so we met over dinner, like a couple of times when he was there, just like exchanging stories. And I just was really fond of the guy, liked his vision, really principled, really committed to Bitcoin, to do things the hard way, even like not to compromise on like the cypherpunk ethos and Bitcoin values. And at the time, I was like still a consultant. In between, I had been a teacher, basically teaching like finance and economics. And like if you want to make ends meet, if you want to be a Bitcoin consultant in France, you have to work on Web3 projects most of the time because there is not that much demand for like pure Bitcoin like projects, mostly miners. Like the rest of the demand, like they just want to mint NFTs and do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like disappointed with all that. And and so basically he offered me to run things here in France and in Europe, to like work with him, building a team, expand the products there. So basically my dream job. And of course I said yes right away.
Awesome. So, like at that time, were there like any Bitcoin strongholds in Europe, and how has that evolved over time? Like, where has Bitcoin been a bigger thing in Europe? Which country?
It's difficult to say. So during the Corona hysteria, I immigrated in Switzerland for a year because I was not in agreement with the idea that my government could lock me at home. And I would say that Switzerland stands out in some sense for many reasons. First, because they departed the gold standard way later than other countries. They basically stopped backing their currency by gold at the big end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s. And like it's a country that has a constitution that is like really based on constitutional law. There is not really a representative government. It's a direct democracy. It's really decentralized in the sense that you have like 26 cantons. You can think of them as states that have a lot of local political power. Like most politicians, they don't have much power. Like you ask many people in Switzerland who is the president, nobody knows. Like it's the way you would want politics to work. Like it's
Yeah.
like just like give like toys to these parasites so they leave us alone. And so I think that, and also like Swiss people, they have like low taxation, a high like savings rate, a strong culture of savings, investment, entrepreneurship. So I think like it's a Bitcoin land by default. Of course, you have like three parts in Switzerland, like the French part, the German part, the Italian part, different culturally. The German part is way more geared towards Bitcoin, I think. It's more classical liberal. The French part is a bit more socialist, but way less than France, for example, or even the French parts of Canada. Other countries in Europe, I would say Germany seem to also have like a strong adoption. Something quite interesting that you can do is overlapping basically the map of like the Protestant Revolution from the 16th and 17th century.
Uh-huh.
with the map of Bitcoin nodes, and it's almost a perfect fit. Something that has been done by a lot of authors. Most famous one would be Tour Demester,
Yeah.
in an article that is really cool called "The Bitcoin Reformation," and I think it makes a lot of sense because, culturally speaking, like Protestantism is a kind of proto-libertarianism in the sense that it's an eagerness to take things into your own hand when it comes to your relation to God, and it sparked a lot of evolution in terms of property, the relation to monarchs, because at the time it depended on the Catholic Church, whereas most like Latin country in Europe, they have a culture inheritance of, like, let's ask for the permission, let's
Yeah.
turn to the state when we have a problem. They are usually they have like stronger states, more social programs, more interventionism. So no culture of savings. Like in France, for example, because it's the one I'm most like best place to talk about. We have a lot of crypto adoption, but it's like in the get rich quick
Mm.
sense of the adoption.
Number go up.
Exactly. They get wrecked all the time. And then ask the judicial system to put people in prison, like it's kind of comic. And we have like a strong core of Bitcoin maximalists. I would estimate like 1,000, maybe 2,000, like really committed Bitcoin maximalists. And also we have a tradition and of like mathematics, good engineers. Like you would find a lot of Frenchmen working, but mostly working abroad, on like core cryptography, distributed networks, stuff like that. Because we have a really good like really good mathematical teaching, especially at the highest level of university and postgraduate schools in France. Same thing as, like, for example, in Russia or Israel or in the US. But yeah, apart from that, like mainly engineers that went abroad. Like, yeah, adoption is way less advanced than, for example, in the US.
Yeah, and actually, I've seen that pattern in like the Germanic and Anglo-Saxon people obviously have less have a bigger adoption than in other countries, and my sister's in Germany. I was trying to orange pill her once, so I tried to look for like a Bitcoin meetups in Germany, and like the map just blew up. Like it was like so many meetups and things everywhere. And I tried doing the same thing in Mexico, and like a few dots here and there. So it's that's where I want to take this conversation. Like you mentioned some.
If I can just mention something
Oh, of
also,
course.
like I learned German in school for like 10 years, and so I remember in 2021 there was this article in the Allgemeine Zeitung, which is like one of the most like purchased and read newspaper in Germany, with an article in the, like, maybe not the front page but second and third page, whole page, covering Bitcoin accurately and praising the technology and
Wow.
the need for the citizens to have something that is a balance of power against like inflation, central banking, and stuff like that. Having that even in 2025 in the equivalent newspaper in Italy, in France, or in Spain is unthinkable. And
Yeah.
I remember back at the time, I read the thing on Twitter, and I just decided like to translate it to the best of my abilities by hand. And a lot of people like in the French Bitcoin community, French crypto community, saw my translation on Twitter, and they were like, "That's amazing! Like, why don't we have that in France?" And
Yeah.
this cultural difference, they are difficult to grasp when you haven't met, or you don't, as is your case, have like family in these countries. But it's really a thing.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing, and yeah, I want to get to that definitely later on. But first, so what is Bull Bitcoin? And end of the day, like what is it, and what's the KYC process there? How KYC is it?
So Bull Bitcoin is basically the simplest business model you can find in Bitcoin. If you go to an airport, for example, you will see a currency desk. And basically what they do is that they say, for example, we will buy Mexican peso at this rate and sell you dollars at this rate. And the difference between the two is their margin. It's called a spread. And you hand out the cash and they give you cash. It's non-custodial, over the counter, easy, simple. That's exactly how BullBitcoin started. Historically, it was a cash desk in Montreal. You came, you would have like Francis, our founder, that would like explain to you like how to use the wallet, how to back up your feed and stuff like that. And you will hand out cash and exit with Bitcoin. And then because like during like the 2015, 2016, Bitcoin became victim of its success. It had difficulties to scale. And so it decided to basically export this business model online, creating a platform that does exactly that with bank wires and Bitcoin transaction, first off chain, and now also over Lightning and Liquid. And so because of the regulation, unfortunately, if you want to create an account, you have to be KYC. We have no way around that, but we try to ask for as few information as possible, and also to keep that and secure that on our own infrastructure with the best like security standard that you can imagine. And so basically it depends on where you're from. So I will break down by jurisdiction because it really changes. In Europe, it's basically the same rules everywhere, except in Switzerland, but we are not in Switzerland at the moment. And so in the whole European Union, you need to be KYC from the first euro. So you create an account, you give an email address, you verify it. Then we will ask for an ID, driving license, proof of residency, certificate of residency, passports, ID, stuff like that. We'll ask your name, your address. We don't need like a proof of residency. You just like give us an address. And then basically you're good to go. Am I forgetting something? No, I don't think so. And you have two ways to do that. Either you can follow an automatic process, which will take like 1 minute, under 2 minutes. It's really straightforward. Oh yeah, and also like the app will ask you to like move your head, like the usual like fintech experience. Otherwise, you can also like do the manual process whereby you send us documents directly. It will be longer because we have to check that by hand and validate that by hand. But I mean, like the only thing that changed is that instead of like just like scanning your ID with the app, you take a photo, upload this onto the platform, and you also take a picture of yourself with a sign written like BullBitcoin, the date, and that's all. If you're a corporation, that's a bit different. You have to go through the manual process, and we will also ask for certificate of incorporation and the ultimate beneficial owner. So any documents that would attest that you have at least 25% of a stake, more than 25% of the company, and your personal information. Then I urge you and I advise you to set up a 2FA, and then you are good to go. In Europe, you just use like IBAN and the SEPA system to transfer money. So you have instant SEPA in most banks in Europe. So it's under 1 minute, your account will be credited, and then you are good to go. You can just like buy Bitcoin over Lightning, on-chain or Liquid. It will be directly sent to the means of withdrawal that you choose. We never hold coins on behalf of clients, and we will never will. And also, you will only purchase Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin-only platform, and it will always stay that way. In Canada, that's a bit different. I think you don't have to KYC. You can do non-KYC up to 99 Canadian dollars a month. That's not high, but I mean, it's always good. In Mexico, I'm not sure about this, but I think under $800 dollars equivalent in peso. I'm not sure. I would have to check. To be honest, I'm mostly like focused on what we do in Europe.
Europe.
And
All right.
since Mexico is kind of new, as you mentioned at the beginning, we have opened there 10 days ago, basically. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, if you go to the platform, we'll detect from which jurisdiction you are connecting, and it will be written like in plain text, either on our terms and conditions or on under the app that's BullBitcoin that rates, where you have like all the rates, different spreads, depending on the currency used and the jurisdiction you are in. Another thing is that we are also in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, there is no KYC. It's like it's heaven,
Wow.
basically, and so it's way easier to use basically a value transfer system that use text messages called SynPay. SynPay. You don't need to be a Costa Rican national. So you can just be a resident living in Costa Rica, as Francis is himself. And yeah, and you're good to go. And in Costa Rica, you can pay in most places like that. Just the merchant will receive colones, the local currencies, through SimPay.
That is amazing. That is really amazing. I wish I would have known about Bull Bitcoin around February in Europe, because I went to my wife from Europe, from Latvia, so we went over there, and then we had to go through the okay. I want to have some cash in case cards don't work and things like that, and we didn't have any exchange knowledge over there. So with this is so awesome. Like you just put your you put your Bitcoin in your Bitcoin to Bull Bitcoin, and then you get euros into the bank account. My wife has a bank account over there. I have Wise, and that just solves like a lot of problems. Like you don't have to work. I think with this, and with this also coming to Mexico, like I think every Mexican can literally live on a Bitcoin standard if he or she wants to. Like there's a no more, I guess you could say, like excuses, because there's other options around as well, not just to build Bitcoin. Build Bitcoin is really cool with this offering, because you can also transfer to Canada and Europe. Like if I'm a Mexican user, I can send Canadian dollars to a bank account in Canada, right?
Exactly. So going back to my orange peeling story, you know,
Yeah.
like uh, like our overall thesis at Bull Bitcoin is that like Bitcoin is just not an investment, just not a store of value. It's really like the future of money, and it's a means of payment. It's a monetary network. It can do a lot of things. And our motto is engineering sovereignty. So we want to create tools so that people can unbank themselves and regain their sovereignty. Of course, it will always be open source tools most of the time, and also self custodial tools. So we can build it, you have to use it. But for example, even myself in France, which is a heavily regulated country where you would find few merchants that accept Bitcoin, using our services, you can live on Bitcoin standard because, as you mentioned, you can pay any bank account in Europe just by Bitcoin. You go through the platform, you click the send fiat payments button. It will ask to fill the field with the IBAN codes of the person you want to pay, be it your landlord, be it like your supplier if you're a corporation, your utility company, anything you want. And then we will create an invoice. You flash it with a self-custodial Lightning wallet, or you send Bitcoin on chain to an address that we will give to you. And once we receive the fund, we will automatically pay for you using our own euro-based bank account. You can even like put a description, like for example, the invoice you want to pay to facilitate accounting and stuff like that. And as you mentioned, you can do also that cross-border and cross-currency. So if you are in Mexico, I want to send you Mexican peso directly on your bank account from France, I can do that. Exactly the same process. I will just choose Mexican peso as a currency on the interface, and I will pay with Bitcoin, put your Mexican banking details, and you will receive the fiat as soon as the like fiat method of payment of choice in the country you are in allowed me to do.
And that is just amazing. It saves carrying around a lot of cash. Like if you come vacationing to Cancun in Mexico, a lot of there's a lot of solo entrepreneurs here in Mexico, people on the stands, like selling tacos on the side of the street. They have like their here it's SPAY instead of IBAN, it's SPAY, the bank account number. And a lot of people use this, so you can pay with this directly. It's a fantastic tool, and I'm loving it. But here's the question: why Mexico? Do you have any idea why you decided to go to Mexico after having Canada and Europe and Costa Rica?
I have no fucking clue.
No idea.
No, I think like I, I don't really know the answer. You would have to ask Francis, but I think it was because we had an opportunity to do it with Louis that you already have on your Spanish podcast. Um, and it's a difficult country to crack because of the regulation, and it's like there is a lot of bureaucracy from what I understood. But it's also like a huge market, you know. It's a fast growing country, very populated country, and like I don't know the reason exactly, but yeah, it kind of makes sense.
I heard, from I remember one of the main reasons were remittances from United people, Mexicans working in the United States, sending money back to their family in Mexico. That is a huge part of the Mexican economy. Like a lot of dollars go into that. So I think that's one of the main reasons.
However, we are not in the US at the moment, and we don't support
Mm,
dollars because you know, like when you are a financial service as we are, like USD is basically a viral disease that can
yeah.
kill your business. Now that the current government is like more Bitcoin friendly, I would say maybe we will revisit this choice, but at the moment, I'm not sure it's the reason because at the moment, like Mexican resident cannot send money to a USD based bank to a USD denominated bank account in America through Bull Bitcoin, unfortunately.
Okay, but if you have Bitcoin in your United States, no, you can't really use Bitcoin because you have to KYC as having an address there, right? You can't send
Even
to.
to
Yeah.
mention something that can be useful to your audience, even if you go to the platform and you use a VPN, please don't use it in the US because we'll restrict your accounts by default. Same with the UK. It's forbidden jurisdiction for us. So like use a VPN, that's fine with us, but put it like, I don't know, in Switzerland, in Mexico, wherever you
All right.
want. Just not Iran, North Korea, the UK, the US, like just avoid this kind of countries.
Wait, so like we're broadcasting to Nostr, Freedom Platform, and everything. So a nice hack here could, in theory, be VPN Costa Rica. Like if you're a Mexican worker working in United States, VPN Costa Rica, where you don't require KYC or something like that. Is that possible? And then you can send Bitcoin, convert pesos into a Mexican bank account. Is that possible?
So
Who knows?
So it can be possible, but if you use a bank account outside of Costa Rica, we'll kind of have to block the transaction. So
Mhm.
there might be ways around that. What is more, I think, practical is if you visit Costa Rica, you already have a Bull Bitcoin account. And same for like all the countries where you are in, you can use it like flawlessly, even if you are not a resident and stuff like that.
Ah,
Like,
okay, okay. You don't have to be a resident with a
no. So
address or thing like.
let's
Oh,
say, for example, you visit your sister in Germany, you have a Mexican Bull Bitcoin account, you can use it in Germany, like pay IBANs in Germany, use it to pay your bills there, to send money
got
to
it.
your sister, and stuff like that. Like, we don't care.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Got it. So, getting over the Mexican part. So, what have been the biggest obstacles then in general, or which has been the hardest country to get into? Europe, Canada,
France,
France has been the
hands
hardest.
on, like from like, yeah, it's France. I'm like, as I mentioned, I'm not really involved in the Mexican process and stuff like
Yeah,
that, but I'm quite sure it's France.
France. Oh, okay,
We have a bureaucratic culture that is like completely insane. And generally speaking, you know, like the most difficult part, and I would say also the most soul crushing part of our business as Bitcoiners is banking, compliance, lawyers, regulations. Like it's a lot of what we do. It's really time consuming, energy consuming, and it's kind of frustrating because it takes a lot of capital and time and capital, and we would rather use those resources to build like better products, better experiences for our clients than to just like write stupid 20-page policies for like clueless regulators everywhere in
yeah,
the world that want to put like like circle in shapes, or I don't know what the saying is, but you get what I
Sure.
mean.
Yeah, yeah. So is it really worth it? Has Francis ever mentioned something like, you know what, maybe it's not worth staying in this market or going to this market, like Europe, for example?
It's I think it's totally worth it, because if nobody does it, it's already a lost cause, you know. Like even if you don't have, like, maybe in the long run, like the regulators will just like crush all this kind of initiative. You have to fight it back. You have to just like try to find cracks into their edifice
Yeah,
and ways to circumvent like the letter of the law, like to circumvent the spirit of the law, but abiding to the letter of the law. And so that's definitely worth it. And we'll take the bullet for you. Like I will like speak with the bankers, the lawyers, the regulators, so that you don't have to do it and you can still use Bitcoin in your daily life.
much
Um,
appreciated.
that's our gift to you. Let's put it that way. However, we are also cognizant of the fact that at some point they could just like decide to make things impossible for us, and then it will just mean that we will pivot to different business models, that we will try to create products that basically does not touch fiat directly, because as long as you don't have fiat on ramps and off ramps, you have way more liberties. But
Yeah,
since Bitcoin is currently in its adoption phase, and I would even argue in maybe not the early days, but quite, I think it's important that people that just like start using Bitcoin. I don't mean like buying Bitcoin on Revolut or their Charge4Apps account or in an ETF. Like, as you understand, that's not our market. Like,
yeah,
but people that want to use Bitcoin as a currency, I think it's really important that there are people like Francis devoting their time and energy to create the best and most seamless experience possible for them, so that when they arrive, they are not discouraged from using it, and that they have a good experience. You know, like
yeah,
in business school, like some of the useful stuff that you learn in the good ones is that like attention span is really narrow, and you cannot expect to have like your markets devoting too much of its brain time to you, and so you have like one shot at giving a good experience to most people. And so it's like polishing all the details so that it's as efficient and as pleasant to use as possible. And if we do that, I think, and it's like a long process, it takes a lot of time. You have to iterate on stuff. You have to get a lot of feedbacks from your client and stuff like that. But if you do that correctly, at the end of the day, people will just use Bitcoin. And it's always, it's also true for other kind of products that we develop, and for other teams and other corporations working with Bitcoin, be it wallet providers, be it like decentralized marketplaces, be it like anything like messagery apps built upon Nostr or stuff like that. Like it's a long process. It won't work perfectly at the beginning, but you just have to keep going, because that's how we win, basically.
yeah. And I can see both sides of the arguments there. For example, being in these more tougher and regulated places like France might be harder, but I'm guessing once you're in there, there's a higher volume of money going back and forth from Bitcoin and the fiat. But if you were to focus perhaps on less tightly regulated areas, I don't know, some South American or African country, yeah, perhaps it's easier, but the volume perhaps would be a lot lower of
So
money
on
being.
that point, Africa is really difficult, because banking
Yeah,
there is a nightmare. So that's why it's really underserved as a continent. However, I totally agree with you. Like this kind of difficulty comes with its own reward in some sense. Like France is a difficult market to crack, but it's also a kind of wealthy country.
yeah,
I'm not sure it will remain that way for too long, but we'll see. And once you're in there, the good thing is that like it's easy to expand. It's easy to crack other countries, because like the most difficult part is behind you, and
yeah,
also like you gain some experience into navigating this kind of like bureaucratic spaghetti like bowl. And like if you can crack France, like other countries will be easy.
Yeah.
In some places, like the problems are different. Like as I mentioned, for example, Africa, there is like almost no regulation in most countries. But if you want to use the banking system there, it's so expensive, so complicated that it's really difficult to expand there.
Oh, okay. Got it. That's very important as well. So do you have any idea which countries are next in BullBitcoin's target?
Oh, I know, but I'm not sure I can
Oh,
disclose this.
got it.
I will be scolded if I do that. But let's say more countries in South America.
Fantastic. I can't wait. Because I think my personal opinion is I think a good market perhaps would be places where people are getting second passports or residencies, like where all the Bitcoiners or people escaping these dystopian countries that we discovered in COVID, right? Like where are they going? And South America, I know, is a fantastic choice for many of them, like Paraguay, Uruguay. So that's pretty interesting.
That's a good way to think about it. Also, and it's only my personal opinion because it's
Yeah.
not me that is making this kind of decision. Of course, it's Francis, but I think like some countries with like the good culture and demographics are interesting because if you try to tap into a country with like a lot of digital natives, with a population with like low age demographics, you can have this kind of natural growth where as people get older, they are already able to use to be basically native to Bitcoin and to use the tools quite easily, especially if their local banking system and local currencies are kind of crappy,
Yeah.
because you provide a good alternative.
Actually, talking about this right now, I guess that's one of the reasons why Mexico, it's a lot of Canadians and Americans go to Mexico. It's close by, it's cheaper, it's a crappy currency. That could have been one of the reasons, right? So,
Exactly.
when I was talking to Louis, he mentioned that Bull Bitcoin also facilitates the buying of houses using Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So,
That
can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that's really jurisdiction specific because
Mm.
in order to do that, you have to really like track the use case in a specific market because real estate law are different in every country. Most of the time, you have to find like notaries or lawyers, depending on the legal framework in place, that will work with you to do that. It takes it takes some pedagogy, but we are approaching the point where in many countries you will find like Bitcoiners that have this kind of jobs. And so they just want their mind to be put at ease about like the legalities of this. But in many countries, it's totally legal to do that. And usually, what we do is just that we facilitate coincidence of wants. So, for example, someone wants to sell a house, he wants to be paid in fiat, you want to buy it in Bitcoin. We will just like swap Bitcoin for fiat during the transaction, making sure that all parties are paid in the currency they want, making sure that it respects the legal requirements in place in these jurisdictions. Also, furnishing a sort of like compliance stamps regarding the origins of funds during the transaction, which is the thing that is most important to most like lawyers and notaries. Usually, they don't want to do that because they don't want to lose their license or have problems because they will be charged with money laundering, facilitating, or stuff like that. But because we have experience into like basically analyzing Bitcoin transaction and putting together like compliance reports, we can just like take the responsibility. We're regulated in every country where we do that, so they can just like transfer the risk to an outside party, and then it became way more interesting for them to tap into this use case because like something that they understand is like Bitcoin is kind of like a new country with a lot of wealthy people
Yeah.
that became wealthy quite fast, that also want a certain lifestyle. Usually, when it's in countries where property rights are kind of okay, they want to own their house because it's kind of the mindset. And so they understand that there is this kind of new bourgeoisie that is like a new market for them. And they don't have many competitors that are able to address this market. So if you give them the tools and the services to do that, they are quite happy to repeat the experience. In France, since we opened, so only like 4 months ago, we did already like almost three like real estate deals. And
Wow.
it's a use case that has a lot of traction, and we are also eager to expand that in other European countries. I'm not, like, as I mentioned many times already, like I'm not really involved with what happens in Mexico, a bit more with what happens in Canada. In Canada, it's something that we have done lots of time. We also do that in Costa Rica, especially because a lot of people are expatriating there, and the banking system is kind of complicated, and there is not many alternatives to do that. So you can contact us for this kind of use cases. And also, if you work in real estate, like, I don't know, in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and that you want to explore how we can do that in your local markets, like, just please reach out. We'll be happy to investigate that with you.
And people reach out through the app. Like if you want to buy property, for example, there's a chat box in the application. Is that the way or how?
You have a couple of ways. You can like just contact us like on Twitter, on Telegram, like email, stuff like that. Like it's not
All right.
difficult to find our contacts. And also you can just like, yeah, use a persistent chat in the app. It's always like either me or Francis or like a Bitcoiner responding in real time. So whatever the problem or use case you have, like we will try to address it. And also you can go to our website, and there is a form for like Bull Bitcoin Prime clients. It's supposed to be like for like large amounts, like large transactions, like anything like north of 50K. And if you want, for example, to buy a house or sell a house in Bitcoin, yeah, I would advise you to just like fill out the Bull Bitcoin Prime form, and then it will end up like either on my desk or on the desk of Guillaume, the guy handling this kind of stuff in Canada. In Costa Rica, most surely will be like Francis or some of the guys there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the way.
That is so awesome. That's truly amazing. So it's also like if you want to buy a house with Bitcoin, it saves you from having to deal with banks because you guys will be the ones dealing with them, right? You save yourself from moving all that money around. That is amazing.
Exactly,
And
and something that I discovered recently that really, like I was kind of astonished, is that in some cases, let's say for example, you are living in Dubai or in England, and you want to purchase like a chalet in the Alps or a villa on the Côte d'Azur in France. Like moving money around, like between two currencies in a different jurisdictions with all the compliance and banking relationships, can be like time consuming, cost a lot of money, like, and in some cases it's just like better to like just go through us using Bitcoin from your local jurisdiction, local residency, and we'll manage with the French banks and stuff like that. Even if you're not a Bitcoiner, I mean, like, it's just like a better settlement network. Like, it's something that we always hear on podcasts, but it's the kind of niche use case where you really see the actuality of this statement.
wow, yeah, and I'm going to definitely keep that in mind because it's a very powerful tool. And as Bitcoiners get richer, I mean, they're going to want a good place to live, definitely. So, regulation on Bitcoin in Europe, is it getting worse? Is it the same as in a few years ago, or is it getting better?
No, of course, it's getting worse every day. But it's a cat and mouse game. Like, you just have to find ways to like circumvent things. And I mean, like, the chance that we have is that like regulators are really clueless. It's both like a it's both like a chance and a kind of like malediction, in the sense that like sometimes they create like really stupid law because they don't understand what they are doing. For example, the latest big regulation in Europe is something called MiCA, which is like basically a transposition of the French legal regime to the whole Europe, because we already had the most like strict rules here. And basically those rules have been implemented with the likes of Coinbase and Binance in mind. So big shitcoin casinos with order books, a lot of like potentially illiquid tokens with like potential scams, market manipulations, and stuff like that. So to give you an example, because we are applying to Mika, these days I spend lots of time to write stupid policies, like 20 pages long, explaining
Damn.
how us with Bitcoin, who doesn't have another book, like when you transact with Bitcoin, going back to my example with a currency desk, we are counterparty of every trade. So there is no price discovery on Bitcoin. We fetch the price on marketplaces where price discovery happens. So first, and second, like I wish we would have the kind of volume that will influence the price of Bitcoin, but
Yeah, no.
let's not kid ourselves. We are really far from that. So, but anyway, I still have to explain in 20-page long documents how we take measures to not manipulate the price of Bitcoin,
All right.
which is kind of like the pinnacle of stupid Kafkaian, Randian, bullshit, bureaucratic stuff that you can imagine. And so there are also other regulations that are in the works, in the great minds of bureaucrats living in Brussels, that are quite frightening, to be honest. And yeah, but we will deal with those. And it's simple. If at some point they ask us to encroach on core principles to continue operating, we'll just leave and create like products maybe that don't use fiat or focus on different jurisdictions. Unfortunately for me, I would likely be out of a job. So I hope every day I did this kind of prayer, like please bureaucrats, don't be too stupid, please.
Take it easy. Yeah.
But yeah, no, kidding aside, like it's also like there are a lot of power plays between like politicians, bureaucrats, regulators, and stuff like that. Like for example, going back to MICA, it's supposed to be an unifying framework for all European countries. So what did the big companies do? What did the big companies? They hired like a bunch of lawyers and tried to obtain the license in the most lenient jurisdictions, like let's say Poland, Malta. And so first reaction from the French regulators, oh, we don't recognize those. It's not, if you want to address the French market, you will have to demonstrate that you do more than what our Maltese or Polish counterparts are asking. So it's defeated by game theory and the political arena already. So we often like overestimate the power of regulation. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. The most pernicious thing I would say is that it's mostly banks enforcing the regulation. That's the real problem. Is that, like, for example, if you are in the same business than us and you try to open a bank account now in Europe, they will make you fill out forms to explain how advanced you are in the process of filling out form for the government in order to obtaining MiCA. And if you don't do that, you don't open the bank accounts. And I mean, like, yeah, it's
Wow.
it's kind of unnerving,
That is terrible. Like, I guess Eastern Europe's a lot more easier. Outside of the EU, have you tried looking outside the EU? Like, but still Europe.
What do you
Romania's
mean?
already part of the EU,
Like
right? Yeah.
like Belarusia or countries like that?
Yeah, Eastern Europe in general.
Like most Eastern European countries are in Europe at this point, like outside of like Moldavia, Albania,
Yeah, everything.
Ukraine, Belarusia. Most of them are in the EU. And in those countries, the problem then becomes like sanction list and stuff like that. Like there are also a lot of countries where it's really difficult to do business because they are on like either OFAC sanction list or FinTrack sanction list or stuff like that. if you start like sending wires back and forth from these countries, like your
Mm,
bank accounts are flagged, and like it's a whole different nightmare.
damn. Well, they're really trying to close the on and off ramps in Bitcoin. Then, at least in Europe. Hopefully, in the United States, it opens a bit more for you guys.
And it's not only Bitcoin, like it's just like countries where they consider that there is a lot of like arms deals, money laundering going, and stuff like that. Like it's really difficult to do business with them through the banking system.
Yeah, I guess South America really does seem more attractive in that regard. I think
Yeah.
in that regard, definitely. So there's a lot of things going on in this cycle. There's always like the new thing in every cycle. Right now, it seems to be Bitcoin loans. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's doing it apparently. So does Bull Bitcoin offer Bitcoin loans or plan to?
No. And I would argue it's not a new thing. It's just like it becomes democratized. Like there
Yeah.
always has been Bitcoin loans. Like most of the like liquidity providers, market makers, like digital asset groups of this world, they are always leveraged during the bull market. They basically rehypothec the Bitcoin that you send them into custody. They loan them to other counterparts, to exchanges, to stuff like that. So the leverage structure internally in the Bitcoin market is always really high. And I'm not only talking about like degen traders on Binance with like 70x leverage. It's more like private deals, like private loans and stuff like that. And we always find out during the bear markets, like it's how it's supposed to work. It's also how it works in finance. The really good things with Bitcoin is that like corpses always surface at some point,
Yeah.
and excess is purged, leverage is purged. It rewards people in self custody and that don't take leverage, and then the market is able to find a footing and resume its ascension to new highs. But it's something that needs to happen basically. Like I would even like argue that most of volatility in markets, especially in the Bitcoin market, because it's an accumulation and distribution game,
Yeah.
is a function of leverage.
Interesting. Oh, sorry. I meant to say Bitcoin backed loans, as in you give Bitcoin, you get some cash in return for that. Same opinion, I guess, right? Because the exchange can do whatever they want with your Bitcoin because it's not what's the phrase again? Not your
Not your cheese, not your
not your
cheese.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's the same thing. And I mean, like now we have like smarter ways to collateralize Bitcoin without surrendering your custody,
Hmm.
using some kind of tweaked multisig, using like DLCs, using many different constructs actually. Um, the problem is that either it's really inefficient in the sense that it will be a peer-to-peer loan market whereby, let's say, I put a Bitcoin in the kind of construct we talked about, like a tweaked multisig with a taproot, an adapter signature or something like that. Then there is an oracle that will attest to the price of Bitcoin. If it goes beyond a certain threshold, I'm liquidated, meaning that you will
Yeah.
take control of my Bitcoin. And beforehand, you send me fiat. So first, it still depends on the fiat system. It's still like banking wires, and it still won't scale because of all the regulation we talked about. And also like because like I mean, even if it's collateralized by Bitcoin, like because the volatility is huge and the opportunity cost of not owning Bitcoin is huge, like the interest rates on the free market will be elevated.
Yeah.
I'm not like Michael Saylor believing that there will be a world in which you will put your Bitcoin at 5% risk-free interest return at JP Morgan's. Like it doesn't make any sense. You and me, we met through Savings Group, and I
Yeah.
think once you understand that like interest rates in a free market, which Bitcoin is, are mostly a function of like time preference
Yeah.
and idiosyncratic risk. If like the underlying protocol that we use to collateralize the loan doesn't have the idiosyncratic risk or very low risk, then it's purely time preference and opportunity cost of not being exposed to Bitcoin. Then the interest rate will be really high. And if folks are interested into that, they can also visit Axiom BTC, which is a BTC only fund from Alan Farrington. The first article he published was of mine. It's called The Emergence of Bitcoin Money Market Funds, Range is a New Green. And basically, it's a thorough, detailed, quantitative analysis of interest rates within the Bitcoin market using funding rates and stuff like that. And you will see for yourself that basically, over the current cycle, the risk market rate for Bitcoin is something like 10, 11%. And if somebody is allowing you to borrow Bitcoin at a lower rate, is that there is something fishy somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for example, here in Mexico, there's an exchange that allows that. But
do you know Celsius?
No, never. I haven't used that one.
Celsius was created by a guy called Mashinsky. That actually Safedin called out like in 2021 or 2022 on a podcast with Tom Vase, a really good video if you can find it.
Yeah.
And basically was offering like 5%, 4%, 6% yields on Bitcoin. So meaning if you reverse the situation, he's borrowing Bitcoin at 5%. Why does he pay 5% when the market rate is 12, 13%? Because it's fractional reserved. And then when people want their Bitcoin back, he won't have it.
Exactly. Yeah, because like, the other exchange that does that here in Mexico, it's a 24% interest rate, yearly interest rate. So it's like really high. Of course, you get pesos back, and pesos are a lot more crappier money than dollars, which is why the interest rate is much.
Exactly. It's basically an FX swap. So if you look, for example, at Unchained, who does that, I would say in an okay way, in the sense that it uses a multi-sig and stuff like that, usually the rate is 12%. And I don't think they have done like this kind of analysis, or at least it's not out there. But I think that it's not like there is a reason why using a different methodology, I find out the same figure.
Yeah, interesting. And well, right, we're finishing up here. Do you want to talk to us a bit more about the about BullBitcoin and its referral program, or anything else BullBitcoin related?
Yeah, maybe first I would like to speak about our wallet. We also have an open source Bitcoin and Liquid also supporting Lightning wallet. So you don't need to be a BullBitcoin customer to use it. It's non-KYC. It's an open source wallet. You can contribute to it. You can audit the code. At the moment, it's only disponible on the Google Play Store on Android. In about like I would say a month, something like that, it will be available also on iOS. And I think it's a really convenient wallet. And I'm not saying that because like I work for BullBitcoin. I've tried many wallets as a Bitcoiner, and now it's really my go-to wallet because I think like Francis did a really great job in terms of design, in the sense that he created a tool that caters both to the needs of Bitcoin newbies, in the sense that it's really easy to use. You can interact with Lightning without having a light node on your phone, without having to manage liquidity, without to have to lock up Bitcoin in Lightning channels, and especially without having to understand how Lightning works.
Question here: is it using Liquid as the underlying like infrastructure? Okay, it's Liquid. Okay,
exactly. So it's the same process than you would find in Aqua Wallet, for example. Basically, it uses Bolt's atomic swap. So when you scan a Lightning QR code, for example, to send money to someone, basically the transaction will go through our node, which is maintained by Bitcoin engineers. So there is never a problem of like uptime, liquidity, stuff like that. And so to facilitate the transaction, we'll use Bolt's atomic swap. So basically, it will take LBTC out from your wallet, and then they will be swapped atomically, meaning that either both sides of the transaction happen or neither happen, from like a cryptographic lockup in some sense. Mm-hmm. So there is no trust involved, and you never surrender. You never. You still have self-custody. And so basically the way the wallet works is that you have only one seed that is used to generate two wallets, a Liquid wallet and a Bitcoin on-chain wallet. The Bitcoin on-chain wallet has all the advanced feature that you will want in a Bitcoin wallet. You can connect it to an Electrum server. Soon it will work over Tor. You can do coin control. You can do coin labeling. You can connect it already with some hardware wallets, and we are working into integrating others. You also have the ability to swap between the instant payment wallet, which works with LBTC on Liquid, and the secure Bitcoin wallet, which works with Bitcoin on chain. And that's quite interesting because, for example, if you do a swap in, swap out, you have like one atomic swap going from on-chain to Liquid, and then an atomic swap going from Liquid to on-chain. And Liquid, even if it's a side chain and it has its downsides, we are totally aware of that. It also has confidential transaction. So it breaks any heuristics, any chain analytics, and it allows you to clean your coins, to regain some privacy. And so it's also a good way to DCA. For example, if you want to DCA low amounts, in order to avoid ending up with a lot of UTXO carrying small amounts and having like consolidation problem in the future, you can just DCA over Liquid. And when you reach an amount at which you are not maybe comfortable in keeping that in LBTC, it depends on the person and their wealth. You just swap it out to your on-chain wallet, to the secure Bitcoin wallet within the BullBitcoin wallet, and then you will just have one UTXO, even if it's, for example, like 30 weeks of DCA. And so I think that's kind of cool. And we also are working on a new feature that will really help onboarding new people. It's a kind of new ways to back up your mnemonic, which is kind of elegant. We hired an engineer, brilliant guy, just to work on that with Francis. I think it will be released in the wallet over the next 6 weeks. I already have access to it, and I already demonstrated it to many folks at like meetups and private events. It works like a charm. It takes like 45 seconds to set up someone with our wallet. It's also an open source technology, so other wallet providers will be able to use it. And basically, it doesn't replace like hardware wallets, multi-sig wallets, and self-custody. That's not the end goal, but it's way more secure than having a hot software wallet on your phone. And if you like try to unspill someone at a dinner or something like that, it really smooths out the experience because they will be able to interact safe custodially with their own wallet on their phone, only access through like 6-digit, 8 digits, like alphanumeric password with the backup saved in the cloud. And they will have the ability to decipher it and retrieve it in a really secure way in the future, even if they lose their phone, even if they don't understand what is a seed phrase, what is a private key, what is a public key. And I think like really for like Bitcoin educators, meetup organizer, like the guys that are in the trenches trying to orange pill people on a daily basis, it solves a real problem.
And going back to your Japan story, where you said you had Kraken, you didn't know anything about seed phrases. I think that's very important. Like not having to worry about this. It's not really okay. Some people say it's not that hard learning 12, maybe 24 words in your head, but people have kind of lost radical self responsibility. Like they can lose these word phrases, not take it seriously or whatever. So I think these options, these solutions you're offering to the market are just actually quite revolutionary, because that's one of my problems that I have when I try to orange pill friends or neighbors. What wallet do I recommend? Usually they'll be buying very small amounts. It's Mexico. People are going to put a lot smaller amounts than in Europe or in the United States. So opening a Lightning channel, that's not going to work. How much Bitcoin can they buy a month? Maybe like 500 pesos, which is like $25. You're not going to open a Lightning channel with $25 worth of Bitcoin. But this Liquid seems to be one of the best ways, I think, for newbies to begin, because they don't have to worry about opening Lightning channels, and they can accumulate, like you said, little amounts until they want to go on chain. So
exactly. And if I can also add something, like a lot of like Bitcoiners, they don't like Liquid. I mean, like for Partly for good reasons, partly for bad reasons. The good reason is that, like, yes, it's a side chain, it's a pegged asset, it's less secure than Bitcoin, it's not Bitcoin. We all agree on that. The like less good reason are that they don't understand how it works, and it's kind of safe. Like, if you delve into how it works, like the functionaries, the
Federated.
fail safe there is, and like how the assets are backed, verifiable, and stuff like that, guys, like, it's okay. Also, they don't understand like that the transactions are confidential. Also, nobody use it. So once you get to use it, you understand, like, yeah, the blocks are quite fast. Like, it's quite a good experience, especially for payment. And also, like I think the way Blockstream intended to put liquid on the market to help folks develop like kind of smart contracty stuff and new kind of assets, like financial assets that have their mirror image on the blockchain. Like, I'm not too convinced about that, but use it as a bridge, as Aqua does and as we do, using both atomic swaps, just to like maybe have a different kind of trade-off between like fast finality and security in the context of small payments. That's really useful.
Yeah.
And also, it gains a lot of privacy in a way that is way easier to do and way less dangerous than interacting with coin joins or mixers.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I've been looking into that myself, seeing what's better for privacy. Because sometimes it's good to buy, easier to buy Bitcoin on an exchange, but then you got that tied to you. You bought that Bitcoin. Like, how do I clean that in a way? I mean, it's always going to be tied to you that you purchased it. But we want privacy going forward, and using Liquid is one of the important, cool ways to do that, and also combining with Lightning. So, yeah, here's a comment here on Noster. Lightning is hard. Yeah, Lightning can be a bit tricky. I'm trying to run my own node, but there's problems around here. But do you recommend later on, as you become a more advanced user, to run your own Lightning node, for example? Or
So
yeah,
I don't advise people against that. Like, I think it's a good experience. I've done that myself. However, I think there is something we should understand about Lightning, is that the way Lightning scales needs economies of scale in the way routes are created with the topography of liquidity. What that means is that for the network to be efficient, it needs to be fractal, meaning that if you look at your lungs, for example, it's a network of aortas, veins, and capillaries, and like the topographical structure, like the ratio of radius and size between all these kind of vessels, like it respects a form of scaling law that you will find in many like self-developing systems, especially systems that develop like in a form of Darwinian way under constraint within nature. And Lightning is not is not immune to this kind of scaling laws. And so I think that like the purpose of Lightning is being a settlement layer between financial institutions, smaller nodes operated by like quite technical and hands-out Bitcoiners. And it's absolutely not something that will democratize. I mean, Lightning in self-custody and stuff like that. That will democratize the access to Bitcoin for payment. That being said, that doesn't mean that Lightning doesn't solve problems and that it's a bad technology. It's really cool technology, but however, it's really complicated. If you work with engineers that have experience with running like large-scale Lightning nodes, when there is a fuck up, it's almost impossible to understand why. Like,
yeah,
there are so many specifications, so many edge cases, so many ways it cannot work. Because Bitcoin already is complicated. Lightning is way more complicated. And so the more you dig into that, the more you will understand that. And unfortunately, many folks have oversold Lightning, I think, stressing too much the upside and not enough like the constraints and the downside. But I think that it has a lot of like prospects and a real bright future as a fast settlement technological layer for companies such as us, like wallet providers like Mint, eCash Mint, Arc providers, and stuff like that. and I really look forward to that developing. But I really don't believe to like Lightning being a tool for plebs.
All right. So you would recommend using things like BullBitcoin, obviously, to acquire Bitcoin, and it's something that promotes self custody. And then for your own wallet, having wallets such as the one that BullBitcoin is designing, or something similar, like you mentioned, Aqua, something uses Liquid as like a base layer, I would say, or its foundation. Sorry. Um,
I, I actually I don't recommend anything. I think the
okay.
market will do its
Decide.
magic, and I just think that most people, they are not like us. They don't care about like the technical elegance of some solution, and they just want something that is reliable, efficient, cheap, fast, easy to use.
Easy.
And
Yeah.
I'm totally convinced by my own experience using our own wallets that this kind of construct with swaps is way better for most people. Now, if you want to use your own Lightning node and have like a tunnel through like Zeus or something like that, like that's totally fine with me. But if you think that most people will do that in your lifetime, you are clueless. Excuse me, but
Yeah.
that's not how it works. Like you have to respect the division of labor and like attention span and stuff like that. Like it's fun to build a car, but I will buy one from the shop.
Yeah. Actually, for example, I tried to run my own Lightning node using Hub and
Mhm.
and using Start OS, but I didn't buy their machine. I decided I had an old PC. I tried setting it up, and it's I'm having problems with it right now. So I'm thinking, you know what, just screw it. I'm just gonna buy these Start 9 from the Start OS people, and then just have something that works. So division of labor works. Like either I focus on learning how to use hardware and software programs, or I focus on being a doctor and healing people. You can't be the best at both things, unfortunately. So this is where I definitely agree with you. For the average person, it's best to lean into that. Like people who know how to use and develop software and hardware, make sure it's open source. Well, not make sure, but I think that's a good recommendation. Open source makes it a bit more reliable. There's more eyes on the code and things of the like. And anyways, Theo, anything
And
else you'd like to
yeah,
add?
yeah. Just on this point, I think,
Yeah.
and this will not get me a lot of popularity, but I think something we need also to observe is that in Bitcoin we have a lot of technical people working on products, and like technical people, they sometimes, despite their brilliance, have a hard time fitting in the shoes of normal people. And like UX is the most important thing uh, in terms of products. Like um, the fact that your technological solution is elegant and is really smart and stuff like that. At the end of the day, like nobody cares.
Yeah.
What is important is that it fits the needs of people in real situation with constraints. And most of these constraints are like I have other fish to fry than learning all this stuff. I don't have like two computer science degrees. I don't write shell commands on my terminal and stuff like that. And like because we spend a lot of times with each other in Bitcoin, we like discussing these things, and that's really cool. That's how we learn and discover new stuff and new ways to address different problems. But at the end of the day, like I really believe in the work of the entrepreneur of like bridging like this kind of technical solutions to the real needs of real people in situation under constraints. And I think this is evolving because the industry is maturing. But that's also why I like this approach that Francis has. And I think it's also because he doesn't have any background, any technical background. He has been in Bitcoin for really long, but he studied political science. So he cannot make things too complicated. And he has some ability, even if he has like a deep knowledge of how Bitcoin works, he has, I think, a good ability to put himself in the shoes of like normal people.
Yeah, that's very useful. And I do think that the most technical thing, or at least the most basic technical thing that the average person should know is self custody. I think that's the most, that's the basic. And if you want to go perhaps a bit more over there, running your own Bitcoin node. But I think that's the basic things, that most technical things that the average person should learn to do. And
100% agree.
keep it simple. All right, Theo. So anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up? Where can people find you online, or referral code?
So, unfortunately, as I mentioned to you by message before this, I'm not really active on Nostr. Like I tried it like by curiosity, but um, I blame Francis. He gave me too much work, so I don't have the time to play with it. So you can find me on Twitter at Theo Mogenet, TheoMogenet. My DMs are open. If you want to use BullBitcoin, have like something you want us to help you with, like don't hesitate to reach out, either here or through the platform. If you want to try our services, the platform is https it's app.bullbitcoin.com. It's the same platform everywhere in the world. Again, you can use like different currencies and stuff like that, and it will adapt to the jurisdiction you are in terms of like KYC and limits and stuff like that. And if you don't like KYC and stuff like that, we're on the same page, no problem. Then I will advise you to try the wallet out. And it's a new product in some sense. So if you also have feedbacks, don't hesitate to give that to us. Keep in mind that the UI will change soon. And so that if you have like feedbacks about the UI and stuff like that, maybe wait for the new one, because it's already in the process of totally changing, and the new one will be way better, I found. And what else? And no, I think that's everything.
I don't know if you want to mention about the. I think you have a missionaries. What's the
Oh
name of
yeah.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to talk about that. So also we have a kind of a referral program that is kind of unique in Bitcoin, in the sense that you have to apply to enter it, because we don't want like shitcoiners or opium peddlers or like this kind of people in it. And the way it works is that every people that you refer, be it a person or a corporation, will get 0.25% of the price of Bitcoin lifelong. And on your end, you would get 0.50% of all the volumes they do over a period of 3 years, whatever the currencies or jurisdictions, still the same thing. And so it's quite a generous program, and we are like 200 worldwide at the moment. And it's also like a cool community in some sense, in the sense that it's a lot of like really driven Bitcoiners focused on this mission to help people on board, adopt Bitcoin, like do things the right way. So yeah, it's lots of fun. And if you want like basically to have like a kind of like reward when you onboard new people and you help them like get into Bitcoin, yeah, please join us. We study any like application that is like serious, from like Bitcoiners that are really committed to I would say like the Bitcoin ethos and the cypherpunk ethos.
Perfect. Right, Theo. It was very, very good conversation. I learned a lot, and hopefully, Bull Bitcoin will continue to grow and orange pill more people in the future. So, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. It was really fun for me too, and hope to talk to you soon.